Kia ora tātou. This week is Baby Loss Awareness Week, and we at Women's Ministries want to just acknowledge this week, and we want to stand with and support grieving parents and whānau, particularly around our territory at this time. And I know for me, when I hear about people having lost a baby, my question is, well, what can I do? Because I feel rather helpless and want to help, but I don't know what the right thing is. And so I thought it would be really helpful for us to talk to somebody who has been through the loss of not just one, but two babies. And that is Megan Pattinson, who is joining me now from Christchurch. Hi, Megan. And
Hello.
lovely to have you with us. And thank you for being prepared to talk to us and share your story. And so would you mind just telling us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, as Carla's mentioned, I'm Megan Pattinson, and my husband and I live in Christchurch. And we've been married for 14 years, and we, in about 2015, and if I'm going back correctly, we started our pregnancy journey of, we'd made the big decision to get pregnant or want to get pregnant and bring babies into our family. And initially that was not quite as perfectly smooth sailing as we all kind of think it's going to be. And it took us a year to get pregnant the first time. And we were so excited, and we were excited to tell our parents, and they were going to be grandparents. And yeah, it was all super exciting. And I was out for a brunch with some friends actually, and I began losing that baby. And I think that was initially was like my mind went into that whole hyperdrive of no, nothing bad's going to happen. This is just a little bump in the road, and it'll all be okay. And got zoomed off to a scan to get everything checked out, and in the process of speaking with a midwife and getting to the scan, I'd lost the baby. And so we'd lost that baby at 10 weeks. And so initially it was like, oh my goodness, we didn't know anybody that had been through that. It was very isolating that, well, why has this happened to us? And why is this happening to us? And a lot of advice around us was, it's all right, just get back on the horse, just carry on, was the phrase that got used a lot.
And did people say to you, oh, well, it was still so early, wasn't
Yes,
even a baby yet?
yeah, yes, which,
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be real strong on that, but I do not agree with that for 1 second, because from that moment that you know that you're pregnant, it is a baby. It's a baby, and it's like, even when you look at statistics and when you go to a 12-week scan, that baby has like teeth in its mouth, and like it's all fully formed. It just gets bigger from that moment. Like you can't argue for a second. And I think especially when you've carried that baby, even if it is teeny tiny, it's still a baby that you've carried. And so, but it took us a whole nother year to get pregnant actually again.
And that must have seemed like a very long year.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And we felt like everybody around us was getting pregnant. Everybody around us was having babies. And yeah, and it was kind of like, well, why is this not happening? Why is this not happening? And then we got pregnant a second time, and we were cautious, but we're still very excited that, okay, well, that's this time it'll be fine this time. It'll all work out this time. We got to the 12-week scan and had no issues. And we'd literally just said to the lady who was doing the scanning and said, oh, well, actually, the last time we were here, it wasn't so great. So we just want to know there's a heartbeat and then do everything else to do.
And you're thinking it can't happen twice.
It couldn't happen. It's not going to happen a second time. It's not going to happen a second time. We've put so much prayer into this, and everyone around us is praying, and like even talking about that now, I get Holy Spirit chills. Like, and everyone was, and we sat there, and she put the scanner on my stomach, and we saw the baby, and Tristan and I looked at each other, and we, there's the baby, and then she quickly whipped it off.
Oh.
And she went, and she got all a bit choked up, and she went, I'm really sorry, but there's no heartbeat. And I remember looking at Tristan, and Tristan just put his head in his hands and was like, this can't happen. Why is this happening again? Like, again. And I was just like, and I even though I feel like it was 8 years ago, I can still feel exactly how I felt in that moment. And it was that moment of going, okay, right, that's okay. We'll just get up, let's go. And I remember walking back, and it's like it felt a little bit like a little bit of a walk of shame, which is not what it is at all. But you have to walk back. So you walk out of the room and you walk back through everybody else that's sitting there waiting to have their baby scans, and you just walk out. You don't pay, you don't pick up your photos, nothing. You just walk out the same door as everybody else. And probably nobody else in that room had any idea what had just happened. But I felt super hypersensitive to it, that it was like, oh, okay. And then you have to ring everybody, and everyone's waiting because everyone knew it was scan day that day. And you have to share that information that, well, we've lost the baby again. And then it was different the second time because I waited for my body to naturally go into that process of losing the baby. Even though the baby had no heartbeat, the baby was still there the second time. And yeah, so that was hard. That was a process of going through too. And I guess in that time, as people say to you, oh, well, it wasn't the right time. Or maybe there was something wrong with the baby and that's why you couldn't keep it. And people say all sorts of things.
Meaning well, but not
100%. Always meaning well. No one ever intentionally says anything silly. But as the person receiving it, sometimes it's hard. I think I kind of got into the mentality that everyone's just trying to mean well, and I had to get that in my head that nobody was intentionally ever negatively speaking. But yeah, all sorts of funny things got said.
Yeah. So tell us some more about that, because you mentioned some of the funny things people said that, well, not funny, but the unhelpful things.
Odd
things people said.
Unhelpful, yes.
But were there particular things that people said that were helpful, or things that people did that were helpful to get you through that?
Yeah, I think that the hardest thing for Tristan and I were people that they didn't know what to say, so they avoided us.
Right.
Or they just didn't acknowledge it at all because it's like, oh, what if one of them cries and I wouldn't know what to do if someone cried? So I think you've got to acknowledge that it's happened, and there will be some of us that have been through it, and you have that empathy, right? So the empathy of, well, I know what you've been through because I've been through it. But if you haven't, you can still have compassion in that situation. You can go, well, actually, I'm really sorry. I feel awful that this has happened to you. But it's acknowledging that it has happened, because I felt through both those processes when we lost both of those babies. It was very much that everybody tiptoed around Megan. Right. And let's tiptoe, because we all really know Megan wants to have a baby, but everybody else is having babies around us, and I was still running people's baby showers, and people around me were having babies, and I wasn't totally fine, but I was strong enough that I still wanted to be able to do things like that. But I didn't want people to feel sorry for me, or like, oh, poor Megan. Like I couldn't cope with that. And I'm still just Megan. I'm not Megan that can't have a baby, or, so don't put that label. I think it's acknowledging what's happened, but also acknowledging that it's okay not to know. There's not often a right or wrong thing to say or to do. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is acknowledging it. So if you know that it's happened, then even just send a text, or to just, when you see the person, even just to give them a hug if you don't know what to say. But that whole pussyfooting around of going, oh, do we say anything or do we not say anything, that is more damaging.
The loss is real.
The loss is real, yeah. And I think that it doesn't matter, even if because some people will lose a baby at 6 weeks, or some people will lose a baby at full term, or they'll lose a baby halfway through, or anything. There's so many different situations, but at every stage, it's still a baby. And as the mother that's carried that baby, it's acknowledging that, yeah, you did carry a baby. I'm sure I'm not the only person that does this, but is that as soon as you go into, you imagine what that baby's going to be like, and you imagine what life is going to be like with the baby, and you imagine what they might be like when they're a toddler, or you might, and even though it's so soon, I'm sure I'm not the only person that goes into that thought process, but you have thought all that through, and then all of a sudden it's taken off you.
Yeah. Well, and you probably started thinking about names. And so that,
100%,
you've started looking into
100%.
the future. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So you've talked about some of the things that people can do that have been helpful. So how
Yes.
did you get through, those two losses? That second one, well, they both must have been a huge blow, but having that
Yeah.
happen a second time,
Yeah.
how did you get through that?
Only God. Only God. And I think that, yeah, God has been so faithful in this whole situation, in our whole journey. And I think that when I wasn't strong, well, when Tristan or I weren't strong enough to press into God, there were so many people around us that were. And like, I remember even my nana, so my mum's mum, I was around at her house one day, and it was God used her, and it was the Holy Spirit spoke straight through her at me, and she said, "You are to stop fearing being pregnant, and you will have a baby." And it was like, okay. And so God used lots of different people along the way, and even used my GP, who isn't a Christian. And one day she told me, I was sitting there and I was getting a prescription for more folic acid or something, just all the different things that you have along the way for pregnancy. And she said, she would probably have got in trouble if anyone had found out she'd said this to me, but she looked me straight in the eyes, and again, God used her and said, "Stop fearing, you will have a baby." And I was like, okay. And so there were things along the way where when I felt I wasn't strong enough, there were people that were pressing in for me. And I think after we lost the second baby, I remember going out for coffee with my mum, and she said to me, she said, "I know you don't want to hear this, but," she said, "I've had this dream." And my mum could tell you that she's never had any other dreams that she would remember as vividly as this one. And the dream was that every year at Christchurch City, we do like a Christmas production-y show type thing. And in Mum's dream, I was Mary, and which I had done previously and had other people's babies. But this year that was coming, I was going to be in this Christmas production as Mary, and I was going to be holding my own baby. And she said, "You might not want to hear that, but I know that that's what's going to happen." And I kind of fobbed it off and went, okay. And then she said, "And there's more to the dream." And I went, okay. And she said, "And I know what you're going to have, and I know what you're going to name the baby." And I went, okay. And which was interesting, because God had also told me what we were to call our baby after these losses. And I said, okay, well, don't say anything to me. Put it on a piece of paper and put it in an envelope and hold on to it. And you might need to get it out, because we might have another baby, because I was in that bit of that kind of frame of mind of, oh, well, this is never going to happen for me. And you get in that valley of being a bit sad. Well, you're allowed to be sad. Be sad, and you think that it's all never going to work out for me and all the rest of it. So I was a little bit in that kind of frame of mind. But along the way, I had also had a very clear prompting from God that we were going to have, when we did have a baby, that we were going to have a little girl, and she was to be called Hope, because she was our Hope baby. And we'd had a New Year's Eve party at our house, and it was that around that time where everyone was choosing words for the year. And I said, well, my word's going to be Hope, because we're going to have a baby this year. And then we lost the second baby, and then we were all sad. the rest of it. And then, so Mum had this dream, and then we were actually we were actually so grumpy about the fact that we hadn't had a baby. We went and bought a jet ski because we were so like, oh, we're not having another baby. So it was summertime. We were like, fine, we're going to go and splurge and buy this jet ski and blah, blah, blah. And we'd had the jet ski for 2 weeks and found out we were pregnant again.
Oh, wow.
And so I never even got on the jet ski because I was pregnant. And so we had this whole way through the pregnancy, we never found out what we were having. I had a friend who I remember we went to the 12-week scan, and she rang me and she spoke to me on the phone the entire way to the scan, and she said, "You've just got to keep speaking this verse out." And it was the 2 Timothy, where it says, "I do not have a spirit of fear." And so I would say this over anything that went at any moment, because that was what I carried from having these 2 losses, and then being pregnant a third time was like, just the battle with fear was like nothing else. Anything, like even any little squeak in your tummy, you're like, and so I got into a habit where I was like, I do not have a spirit of fear, and I would just speak that verse over this baby and over myself and things like that. So we went to the 12-week scan, and there was a heartbeat, and it was amazing. And so we carried this beautiful baby for 9 months, and we never found out the gender of the baby because we wanted to have a surprise. And so we had our boy name, we had our girl name, and she was born, and it was a little girl, and we called her Hope Marie, and very clearly from God that she was to be our hope baby, because she not only brought us hope, but there were so many people that were on the journey with us that she brought hope to them, and she still does. And so she's Hope Marie. Marie was after my sister who passed away too. So she's carries these two beautiful names. And I remember Tristan ringing Mum and saying, "You need to come up to the hospital and meet this baby that we've called Hope Marie." And Mum and Dad came up to the hospital, and she came with the envelope, and she said, "Well, I've held on to this envelope." And I'd actually forgotten about the envelope because we hadn't talked about it again, because I said, "Don't talk to me about it again." And Tristan opened up the envelope, and clearly on this little piece of paper that she'd got off her desk, and it said that the baby's name would be Hope Marie Pattinson. And that was of no discussion with me. It was only between her and God had told her. And then the ultimate God amazingness was on the bottom of the piece of paper. There was a verse which Mum hadn't even noticed until we pulled it back out of the envelope. And it was the verse where it says, "I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord." And so this was all, and it was God's hand completely in it. And even though when I was in those darkest days where I thought this was never going to happen, and that what was even the point in even trying to have a baby, because this is what's just going to happen all the time, is actually God had been faithful that whole way through. And I think that I'm jumping a little bit over the show, but one of the really significant moments was I had this conversation when we lost our first baby with the oldest person in our congregation, who at the time would have probably only been about 90, but she's nearly in the late 90s now. But she, because we had chosen to be so open about it, she came to me one Sunday and she said, "Thanks for being so open," because she said, "This happened for me 50, 60 years ago, but we weren't allowed to talk about it."
Right.
You just sucked it up and you carried on. But now she, in that process, because I was being so open, that she was able to grieve that loss 60 years later. And I think that that's the beauty of being in a congregation of such an intergenerational congregation, which is such a blessing, is that all these different ages are doing life with you. And because we were open, she was then able to grieve and to be able to be open as well. And
at one point, people never talked about this. I mean, a lot of people have always experienced baby loss, but you didn't talk about it, did you? You just dealt with it on your own. No one knew. So wonderful that you've been able to share that and help other people to unpack what might have happened perhaps years ago. And I just want to come back to what you said about that verse about not being people of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And I'm thinking, look, we never know who might be watching this and what's going on in their life, and whether it's loss of a baby or any kind of loss or kind of a grief or way in which life has just gone in a direction that we didn't think it would. And that happens for most of us at some point, but we can take that verse that tells us not to live with fear, because like you said, God is the thing that got you through. And if God holds us, life can throw whatever it throws at us, and we can know that He holds us. It doesn't mean that life will be easy. It doesn't mean life will go nice and neatly like we think it's going to go, but it does mean ultimately that God is the one who holds us. So just want to say a huge thank you for sharing your story, for being vulnerable. I know that that will help people who are listening, who are dealing with their own loss, and those who are walking beside people who are dealing with loss. So thank you so much. And
thank
you to
so
everyone
much
for watching. Ka kite.